member for Denrinoff.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, like the leader of the opposition before me, I want to rise in support of the motion as presented by the Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, at this time of year, a lot of my constituents in Denrinoff look forward to receiving barrels from overseas. The data in the Ministry of Finance and other social agencies will tell us that remittances contribute significantly to the community economy in some pockets of St. Lucia. And Denrinoff happens to be one of them. Ever since we saw the demise of the banana industry, Mr. Speaker, residents or constituents of Denrinoff have been relying very heavily on relatives and friends from abroad to help them meet their daily challenges. And as the Christmas season approaches, there are hundreds of families in my constituency who look forward to receiving those barrels containing toys and other personal items. And whereas some persons in St. Lucian society today have the luxury of hopping on an aircraft and going to Miami and other big cities to shop, Mr. Speaker, there are quite a few persons who do not enjoy such luxuries, and so they must rely on those barrels. And when the initiative was first introduced to waive VAT and other taxes on those barrels, Mr. Speaker, I was not in government, but the St. Lucia Labour Party administration that brought it into this parliament to make it happen must be commended. Mr. Speaker, je dis ça en créole, et je quitte moi faire ça, nous sommes en mois célébration créole. Je vais supporter l'émotion qui le Premier ministre a mené à Caille Concile bon matin, que nous avons fait changement en rôle by VAT là. Et que ces changements nous avons fait bon matin, c'est pour quitter les gens qui ont recevé barrel qui a sorti de l'Amérique et puis l'autre place, pour joindre ces barrels de la manière que vous ne pouvez pas payer un shy tax laisser ces barrels là arriver cette liste. Nous savons là, les gens, Mr. Speaker, cette liste, qu'on nous a parlé, qui a fait plan pour aller à l'aéroport, il a payé ticket pour aller shop pour Noël, et que venir par famille, that you acheté Miami et puis l'autre côté. Et aussi, nous n'avons pas mis nous cette liste, les gens qui passent même ni assez l'argent pour acheter un livre dans le pays cette liste. Et quand pile ces gens qui dépend en les familles qui ont resté dans l'autre pays pour voir barrel qui ni commission had toys et puis l'autre bagaille côté qui yo ni en saison Noël qui kay un bit confortable pour yo. Et c'est pour raison ça Mr. Speaker moi debout dans les pieds pour supporter changement ça nous qu'a fait un barrel. But Mr. Speaker, it would be remiss of me to just speak to the concessions as they relate to the barrels and not at least briefly visit some of what was said by colleagues on the other side. The member for Castries Southeast, Mr. Speaker, who spoke immediately following the leader of the opposition, one would have thought that he would have joined, quite apart from joining the leader in supporting the motion, Mr. Speaker, he would see the motion and the contribution of the leader of the opposition for what it is. But instead, Mr. Speaker, he saw an opportunity once again to score political points. And in what has become characteristic of him in this chamber, Mr. Speaker, it was another serving of what we call découché. The same things we keep on hearing all the time. Jobs, jobs, jobs. We could not govern. We have not done anything for the people of St. Lucia. And Mr. Speaker, he said something which I believe was very, very, very poor taste. He gave the impression that any time a St. Lucia Labour Party administration came to the parliament to initiate discussion on legislation or amending schedules, those were always meant to benefit specific people. I believe that was in poor taste, Mr. Speaker. We will not, on this side, stoop to that low, Mr. Speaker, to advance our argument. But a member for Castries South, he made a very, very important point when he said that notwithstanding the initiative for the barrel is supposed to ameliorate the conditions for the average St. Lucian, Mr. Speaker. That notwithstanding, there are scores and hundreds of St. Lucians on the eve of Christmas who do not know, Mr. Speaker, how they are going to survive. Mr. Speaker, the member for Choiseul said that it is unfair for imported materials to get preferential treatment, I'm paraphrasing, over what is produced locally. And I support that, Mr. Speaker. There should never be an instance where an imported item that can be produced in St. Lucia ought to be getting treatment or enjoy conditions that the locally produced items will not get. But what he did not tell you, Mr. Speaker, is that VAT is not the only factor responsible for local items being more highly priced than what is imported. And so we on this side of the House, irrespective of who stands to benefit, because we understand, Mr. Speaker, that the manufacturing sector has a contribution to make to the development of this country. And if this country is going to develop economically, Mr. Speaker, the chances of the people of Denrinoff receiving what is rightfully theirs in the scheme of governance will be improved. So if this amendment to the legislation is supposed to benefit the manufacturing sector, we on this side have absolutely no problems with that. And in a personal Denrinoff capacity, Mr. Speaker, I will provide all the necessary support that is needed to ensure that this happens. But what I cannot fathom, Mr. Speaker, and what is distasteful, is when an opportunity presents itself for objective and constructive discussion. When that happens, Mr. Speaker, members instead prefer to, as the artist would say, pencher and then skew the discussion in a manner where they believe it is going to give them political favor. Mr. Speaker, it has long been said and noted that there is a propensity on the part of politicians to campaign in poetry and to govern in prose. On the campaign trail, we say one thing. And when we find ourselves in government, Mr. Speaker, the reality that confronts us most of the time is one where we have to rethink our positions on issues of national development and do things contrary to what we said we would have done. And there's absolutely no problem with that. But we have to be man and woman enough to come in this chamber and tell the people of St. Lucia that on the campaign trail, it was convenient for us to have said at the time, because it was going to land us votes, that we were going to remove VAT. And that VAT was not a good thing for St. Lucia. That is what was said. Mr. Speaker, I entered the political fray in 2011. And the discussion about VAT was there long before I entered. I remember driving on Manuel Street, and there was office space for the VAT unit. There was furniture costing hundreds of thousands of dollars for the VAT office prior to the general elections of 2011. That was the work of the United Workers' Party administration. And, Mr. Speaker, all the mechanisms were already put in place for the implementation of that. When we came in as a government, we carried through with all the recommendations that had been made, Mr. Speaker. But you know what, Mr. Speaker? It is sad and even shameful, Mr. Speaker, for someone to come in this House in his capacity as an honorable member and make it seem as if that was a creation of the St. Lucia Labour Party administration. And in addition to the United Workers' Party, Mr. Speaker, putting all the mechanisms in place for the implementation of VAT, today, Mr. Speaker, they want to have us on the defensive for VAT. You were on the campaign trail as a political party, and you said that you were committing to the total removal of VAT. Le flambeau a campaign. Yo dit, Mr. Speaker, that c'était désir pour tirer VAT nettement comme un système taxe en pays cette ici. And we are already inside the 4th year of this administration's life. The 1st year is completely gone. The 2nd year is finished. The 3rd year finished. We are inside the 4th year. And instead of members opposite profiting a golden opportunity to come and tell us how advanced they are with their plans for the removal of VAT, they come, Mr. Speaker, and they try to put a political spin on it to make it seem as if it is the St. Lucia Labour Party that has a problem, and we were the ones who implemented VAT and made things hard for the people of St. Lucia. Mr. Speaker, 2.5% of revenue foregone. And if, Mr. Speaker, the government can find a mechanism tomorrow to totally remove VAT, I will be happy. If the government can reduce taxation to new levels in this country where the average St. Lucian is going to benefit, I will be happy with that. But you don't come here because it is politically expedient, and it is the politics of it that is bad. You reduce the VAT by 2.5%. Si gouvernement flambeau ça là, ça vini un caille constitution jour, et dit nous y a tiré VAT nettement, Mr. Speaker, nous tous qui ici en les side opposition, nous qu'à supporter ça. Mais pas venir ici, et qu'on a fait bagaille, qu'on a fait pour gagner un vote, et puis qu'on a connaît moun, et demain on a venir dire nous, c'est même opposition qui te fait le ouais, et c'est pour ça payer en condition. When you reduced it to 2.5%, on the surface it looked good. If you had taken it out completely, that would have been excellent. But you reduce that by 2.5%, you forego approximately $60 million, and every other weekend you come into this house to borrow the same money that you decided to forego because it looks good in the eyes of the electorate. When are we going to have a frank discussion in here, Mr. Speaker, on those issues? And then they tell you that things are okay. People ought to be happy. That is not the case in my constituency, Mr. Speaker. The people of Dennery North are not benefiting from those programs. And I have no guarantee, no hope, no confidence that any changes we make in this house will be down to the benefit of my constituents. You know how many of them went back to the farms to plant bananas? Because they were promised, Mr. Speaker, that there will be new markets for them in the French territory. And today it pains me to see grown men waking up at 5 in the morning to go on those farms. And when the banana is ready for harvest, they have to feed it to pigs or allow it to rot on the ground. And I'm supposed to come in here, and there are many of you on this side who represent constituencies that are similar to mine, rural constituencies. But it's convenient for you to sit, stay quiet, do not speak against those ills. But I'll tell some of you something, through you, Mr. Speaker. Some of you have served this country with distinction. Your legacy and reputation for some of you is on the line by association. And you need to check yourselves. So, Mr. Speaker, whereas I support this particular amendment to the VAT legislation, I want to state, Mr. Speaker, that I am not altogether convinced. I am not altogether convinced that this government, as they had promised us in relation to VAT, will remove the VAT completely off the backs of St. Lucians as they claim. But in terms of the barrel, Mr. Speaker, I know the people of Oleon, Belmont, Gadet, Larissus, Lapel, Richford, Grand Ravine, Denier Riviere, they are anticipating the arrival of their barrels. And some of them, Mr. Speaker, they're not even in a position, especially the elderly, to organize transportation to collect the barrels. And we have put a program in place in constituency to assist them with transportation and whatever other logistical problems they may have to receive their barrels. I said at the beginning of my presentation, Mr. Speaker, that remittances contribute significantly to the rural Dennery North economy. Un pile moun qui dépend tous les semaines, tous les fortnights, tous les mois pour aller à Western Union et MoneyGram pour un petit argent pour aider like bill et puis l'autre basic expenses. And when it is quote-unquote barrel season, Mr. Speaker, a lot of them wait in anticipation, hoping that they will get that call. And don't take that lightly, you know. As I said earlier on, there are a lot in our society who can hop on the plane, go to Miami to shop, and get all what they desire for the holiday season. But on the contrary, Mr. Speaker, there are a lot of persons in St. Lucia today, especially the rural parts, who cannot make ends meet. And it is those barrels that they are anticipating, those barrels they are waiting, those barrels they are hoping to receive to provide some measure of comfort for them during this holiday season. Mr. Speaker, with these few words, I bring my contribution to this motion to an end.